Life. You've heard it said to be or not to be, right? That's the question. And if we're honest, sometimes the latter sounds a little better. It's like maybe it's just not ready to be. Like this is just, it's tiring, isn't it? It's overwhelming. You're physically exhausted, mentally, emotionally. And if we're honest, sometimes life feels like we're a juggler, except we didn't get any training for this. We weren't looking to be a juggler. We're just all of a sudden given all these balls, 3 balls. Oh, try 5, try 10. And now it's not balls, it's running chainsaws. And so the stress just went to overwhelm. The tired went to exhaustion. And this is the reality in this thing called life, where you have this personal life with all its facets and this professional life that has so many demands on us, and not just demands from bosses and the company, but like financially, like it takes finances to survive. And so it's such a key component of not just the way we provide for our necessary needs, but it's also so much wrapped into our identity and worth and value. Like, this is what I'm pouring my life into. Does it have purpose? Does it have meaning? Am I seen? Am I important? And so you have all these things, voices, people, weights pulling at you. And what we often hear is this: we just need balance. If you can just figure out how to balance your personal, professional life, you'll be fine. And here's the problem with that. First, it divides your life into 2 categories: that you just have a personal life and you just have a professional life, which is just not true. Human life is so much more complex than 2 things. Plus, it also says it puts these 2 almost at odds against each other. Like finding balance between 2 things has no connectivity. Connectivity has no integration. It says you have your personal life, keep these things apart, and just figure out how to teeter-totter them, right, into balance. But if you just have a personal life and a professional life that you're trying to balance according to the pressures coming in, trying to figure out how to make everything 50-50 to make people happy, guess who's not happy in that situation? You. Where are you when it comes to making people in your personal life happy and people in your professional life happy? You're not there. Because in the reality is life has more than 2 parts. And what we try to do then, and this is what's happened over the last probably decade, is self-care has been the big thing, right? You've probably heard this. So self-care, you got to take care of yourself, take care of yourself. So now it's like, hey, you have self-care, you have your personal life and your professional life, which basically means you have people in your life that are personal connections and you have professional connections. Make everyone happy while you try to survive through this thing called self-care. And even that is a problem, because how do you balance 3 things, right? What teeter-totter has 3 ends to it? There is right, 2. And again, I know we're talking semantics, but I think words have visuals. We're visual, humans are visual people. We were visual before we were even writers. And so visuals have an importance. And whenever I think of balance, when you think of balance, what do you think about? Like probably, right, the Karate Kid up on the pier, you know, doing his little crane kick, you know, standing on one leg, that's balance. You know, the first time you rode a bike, that's balance. I think about the picture that comes to my head is in New York. Remember in New York, there's the guy who would do the high wire act and he'd anchor it between 2 skyscrapers. And he'd be like this, right? Or he'd have this little, like, he'd have the Q-tip pull, right? And it's like balance. Whenever I think about balance, I do not think about peace. I don't think about happiness. I think about stress. Who thinks about balance and thinks, oh, that's what I want is balance? No, like that seems like work. Like, sure, once you ride the bike and get used to balance, but guess what? Once you've done that, you don't think about it. No one gets on a bike and goes, that's a rider, right? And goes, oh, you know what I got to do? I got to balance on this thing. You just do it because you don't have to think about balance anymore. So this idea of you just got to find balance is massive stress, massive exhaustion. It's just adding to, I think, the problem with what we're trying to solve. So how do we solve it? What do we do? First, I think it's changing the picture. Get rid of this picture of balance, because that has too much stress, has too much work. And it's probably the reason why we're not achieving balance, is because it seems like one more thing to add to the to-do list that doesn't seem like it's actually going to do us individually any good. So what I want to give you a different picture. Instead of the Q-tip, right, pull for balance, I want you to think about a rubber band. right? And so you probably have a rubber band. I've looked all morning and I cannot find my rubber band collection. I don't know where it is. But a rubber band, think about that. If you just hold a rubber band in your hand, right? It's just soft, it's pliable. It's not doing anything. It's not doing its job to hold anything. It's just existing. And that's the reality. Like your life, right? Without purpose, without direction, it's just kind of there. You're just existing. But all of a sudden, you give your life a purpose. You give it something to do that actually is the reason you were created. And now it's doing something. It's useful. And that's a rubber band now. But when a rubber band, think about this. Does a rubber band just have 2 points? When you think about balance, right? You think about those 2 points. But a rubber band, I can pull a rubber band 2 ways, 3 ways, 5 ways. I can pull it in any direction because it's pliable. And this is the reality. Your life has so many areas and so many aspects that you have to think, okay, what am I giving my life to? How much am I pulling to this? And if I'm pulling to this, guess what happens? If I take a rubber band and I just start pulling, what's the rubber band ball? How many rubber bands can we put around this ball? Well, the reality, and it's stretching in all these different ways, but the issue is once it gets to a certain size, it snaps, right? It breaks. It's the same thing with your life. If you try to give your life to all the aspects and areas of it equally, it's going to break because no one has that much give. You have to figure out, in light of the areas and aspects of life, what am I going to give my life to? What am I going to give my focus to and my energy to? And when am I going to do that? How am I going to do that? And here's the magic secret. How can there be integration? How can